All right, guys, so up to this point, we haven't defined any types, and that's a big part of TypeScript and why Angular uses TypeScript. It makes your code more robust and less prone to errors. Now, what we've done here is we've defined the values with our properties, and you don't see that all the time, okay? Oftentimes, you'll just see the property defined like this without the value. But since we did add values here, these variables are essentially typed to whatever type they're equal to. So in this case, first name is a string. If I were to go down here and then say this dot first name equals and then a number, you're going to see we already have an error in VS Code that says type 4 is not assignable to type string. And if I save this, we're going to see that error down here. Now the browser, the app is still showing, but if we were to escape the server and go back in, it would show an error over here as well. Now oftentimes, like I said, you won't have the value defined up here. Okay, it'll come in through an AJAX call or through another method or something like that. And now you can see that 4 is acceptable. If I go ahead and save, you'll see no error down here. Now, what you usually want to do is set a type to your properties. So what we would do to set that is put a colon and then the type, which in this case is string. And now you'll see that we get this error. If I save it, we're going to get that error again. Okay, so we're specifically assigning this variable to a string. So let's do that with all of these. So we'll say string, and the age is going to be a number. And then the address, I'm going to get back to the address since that's an object because I want to talk about interfaces. But down here, let's set the first name to John. And then we'll do last name equal to Doe and age equal to 30, and then save, and then everything should be all right. Actually, let's set the address as well. I'll say this dot address. What was it? It was street and city and state. All right, so we'll save that. So I want to go over some of the other types as well, which they're not really going to make sense for this particular component, the user component, but we'll just take a look at them and then we'll get rid of them for the next video because we're not going to need them. But let's take a look at any. So let's just create a variable or a property called foo and set it to any. So that's exactly what it means, is it can be anything. So I can say this dot foo equals 1. That's fine. I could make it a string. That's okay. I could make it a true or false, a Boolean. That's fine as well. Okay, so that brings us to Boolean. So let's do one called has kids, and we'll set that to the type of Boolean. And then we'll go down here and we'll say this dot has kids. If I set that to a number, we're going to get an error. If I set it to true or false, then that's fine. All right, so we have any, we have Boolean. Now, if we wanted to do an array, let's say we wanted to do an array of numbers. So I'm just going to call this number array and set it to the number type, except I'm just going to add brackets on the end. So that's just saying that this has to be an array of numbers. So we'll go down here and say number, or this dot number array, set it to an array, and put some numbers in, and that's fine. Now if I try to put a string in here, then we're going to get an error. If I save that, we'll go ahead and get an error. It has to be numbers. All right, and at the same time you can do strings, so we could say string array and set that to string and a set of brackets, and then down here we could do this dot string array I'll say hello world, and that works. Now if you wanted to have a mixed array with mixed data types, then what you could do is you could use any and use your brackets. So now we could say this dot mixed array, and we could put whatever we want in here. We could put a boolean, we could put undefined, we could put a string, so whatever you want. Alright, so let's see, what other types do we have? We could also do a tuple or a defined array. So let's say my tuple, and we'll set that to basically like a mapped array. So we could say this has to be, no quotes, this has to be a string, a number, and a boolean. And this should not be an equal sign, this should be a colon. All right, and then down here, let's say this dot my tuple, and set that to, what was it, a string, a number, and a boolean. So that works, but if I were to do string, number, number, that's not going to work. Now anything after what I defined, string, number, boolean, is going to be fine. It's not going to throw an error. So I could put whatever I want after this. Oops, let's like that. All right, so that's going to work as well. So we also have void. So let's go up here and let's just set unusable. This is, you wouldn't really do this, set a property to void, but you can. We also have undefined. I'll set a variable called u to undefined. We can also do null. I'll set a variable or a property called n and set that to null. And then down here, we'll say this dot unusable. The only thing that we can set here that's not going to throw an error is undefined. Anything else will throw an error. U, we're going to set that to undefined. And then we have our n value, which we set to the type of null, so we can set that to null. All right, so those are the types that we can use in TypeScript. Now, it's not just properties, component properties we can assign types to. We can also assign types to function parameters and return values. So I'm going to create just a silly function called add numbers. Doesn't really have anything to do with our user component, but just to give you an example, it takes num1, num2, and then it just returns num1 plus num2. So what we could do is we could take each parameter and give them a type. So this has to be a number, and this has to be a number, and then we could define a type for the actual return value here, which also has to be a number. So if we wanted to use this, we can go in the constructor and we could say this dot add numbers, and let's say 2 and 3. We'll go ahead and console log this. And save, and we get 5. All right, if I were to make this a string of 2, that's going to throw an error because we assigned a type of number to this parameter, so it has to be a number. Same thing with the return. If we were to go down here and return, let's say true, okay, that's not going to work because we assigned the return type to a number. If I go ahead and I change this to Boolean, that'll be fine. Okay, the numbers we're passing in are numbers, so that's okay. We're not going to get an error there, and we're returning true. I'm just going to undo that though, and now everything should be good. All right, so that's going to be it for types. In the next video, I want to get into interfaces, and we're going to get rid of all this stuff in the next video. I also want to have the user not as separate properties like this, but as an object, just a single user object. So we're going to just kind of mess with this a little bit in the next video, and also take a look at interfaces.